Okay, today we're going to talk Phantasmagoria. This is my fourth entry in the countdown to Darkadelic from the Damned. They don't release albums all that often, so it's a big deal when they do. And I've decided to commemorate this occasion by going through every one of their albums. Not so much reviews, just kind of, a little bit of review, but more just talking about them. There's not a lot of like facts and stuff because I do this walking around. I don't carry notes, and you can go to Wikipedia for that bullshit anyway. So Phantasmagoria, that was really the first time that I heard of them. And it was through, they were playing videos from that album on MTV, and they would pop up in Kerrang all the time. Now, my impression of them at the time, like I didn't know anything about them. They were blacklisted early on by Malcolm McLaurin. I almost said Malcolm McDowell. That'd be funny. Yeah, Malcolm McLaurin and the intelligence agency he was working for blacklisted them pretty early in the whole punk rock social experiment. I guess they figured they had no use for them once the Sex Pistols thing took off. That served all their purposes. They were using the Damned at first to get gigs because the Damned could get gigs. They used to play outside London. The Sex Pistols didn't. They had no draw anywhere outside London. I know John Lydon probably wouldn't like to hear me talking about that. I love John Lydon, by the way. I'm just saying. He doesn't like to think anyone had any role in helping him and them. But yeah, they couldn't play anywhere outside of London. They never played anywhere. So the Damned often did. They would do gigs in all these different places that a lot of punk bands didn't. So the Anarchy Tour, which was originally Sex Pistols, Clash, Johnny Thunders, and the Heartbreakers, and the Damned, the reason they had that lineup is because the Damned knew the clubs. They had a relationship with the clubs that they were playing. So they were using the Damned for these gigs, right? So the Sex Pistols thing blew up, the Grundy thing, and then a lot of places started canceling shows because of it. So it was one particular gig the Damned rolled into town. They didn't want the Sex Pistols to play. They were going to take the show, but no Sex Pistols. So in solidarity, the Clash, of course, because they're very closely tied to that whole social experiment, intelligence agency thing. They in solidarity with them, and they're clowns anyway. The Clash, the fake punk. I like their music, whatever. I'm not getting into it. The Damned were like, well, we know these people. We've built a relationship with these people. We're not going to screw them over, you know. So they played, and because they played, it caused this giant rip. They were blackballed by Malcolm McDowell, and subsequently, that's why you really never heard about them in America at all until they signed to MCA Records. At that point, the punk rock experiment had already happened, already burned out. So I guess they didn't care about stopping them from getting signed to a major, so they did, and Phantasmagoria was released by MCA Records. Now, Phantasmagoria was a complete pivot in sound and style. Not complete, they started going this way anyway, but it was like pretty much just a straight up kind of goth rock record. Captain Sensible, the longtime bassist guitarist for the band, he had inexplicably become a pop star, and was his career was had to be his main thing. His solo career was had to take precedence over the Damned because that was the moneymaker, and so he left the band. Roman Jug, who was playing keyboards, previously moved down on the guitar, wrote a lot of the songs on Phantasmagoria, and with the loss of Captain, there was a sort of a loss of the humor, kind of freewheel and wild man kind of side of the band, and it became a lot more like refined, and the music was very It's great, but it's like goth rock. There's not a lot of anything in there that would make you think they were a punk band. So for me, this is how I was first introduced to them, through videos on MTV, like Shadow of Love. I had to think about that for 10 minutes. And the other singles, they had Grimly Fiendish. We didn't get the Grimly Fiendish video a lot, but the two other ones we would see. Anyway, that and seeing them in Kerrang. And all I saw was the pictures, so I just imagined they were just a poopy kind of goth band like The Cure or something, or The Church or something like that, you know? And at that point, they kind of were. I had no idea that they were a pioneering punk rock band, none of that. Years later, it was such a revelation to put these two kind of things together. But yeah, so Phantasmagoria was their first major label album. And it was preceded by a single, Grimly Fiendish. They had a video for it. And MCA put some money into them, and it paid off. Grimly Fiendish became a big single for them. And it just, it brought them to a level of popularity they had never experienced before. And the album followed suit with that situation. They went on tour. It was later captured on a live album that wasn't actually released until years later. But the album itself I like. It's good. It's different than everything else that came before it. Like I said, it's more like a goth rock kind of thing. But they were moving in that direction anyway, away from punk and more into that. Starting with well, there's some traces of it, I guess, on Machine Gun Etiquette, their 1979 album. Is that 78? No, it's 79. What's wrong with me? Whatever the case, and I'll just say as an aside, Machine Gun Etiquette, the following album, the Black Album, and the one after that, Strawberries, is like one of the greatest album trilogies in rock history. There's not many bands that have three of them right in a row that were that good, that kind of quality. So they were coming off that. And they lost Captain, and they decided to kind of make Dave more of a front person. He was always a front person, but it was like he was kind of always competing with Captain for attention. You know, Captain Siskel was a big part of their image and stuff. And so with Captain out of the way, it was just like all Dave. It was the Dave show. And the funny thing is like the rest of the band, Dave always had that style of dress. Like he was dressed like he's lived in Dracula's castle. He always did, even in the early punk days. It wasn't as frilly in the early punk days, but he always wore the makeup. He always dressed kind of Dracula-like. And hold on a second. But in Phantasmagoria, it was like there's a lot more romantic kind of thing to it, like what you would traditionally think of it as goth. A lot of frilly shirts, like von Wolfenstein hairdo, which was later stolen by Johnny Depp for his Sweeney Todd movie. It's the same fucking thing. I never seen that movie. I wonder if he acts like Dave in it too. I don't know. But anyway, it was quite a pivot. But to most people, right, worldwide especially, in the UK, people, you know, knew all about the Damned and stuff. But for most of the world, this was like the first introduction to these guys. You know, so they were like me. I figured they were just one of these kind of mid-'80s goth sort of bands. And that's what they sounded like. It's a little tougher than a lot of those bands. There is some keyboards and stuff, and the album does suffer a bit from 80s production, meaning the high-tech stuff of the moment. And the problem with that is while it sounded new and like crazy in the 80s, when you listen to it now, you know, a lot of bands fell into that now. They want to use the new technology that was there. And but whatever. The album's very it's kind of theatrical. It's almost like some of the tracks on it sound like stuff that would be in a musical or like a play. I love it. I think it's great. Then again, I mean, I'm a bit biased. I don't think the band's ever made a bad album outside of one we covered the other day, Not of This Earth. And Not of This Earth isn't a bad album. It just doesn't sound anything like it because it wasn't written by them. Anyway, yeah, they had like 3 singles they did from it. They all did pretty well. The tour did well. Everything was, they were finally making some money. It was good, you know, like if you had been a fan of the band for a long time before that, you would have seen that it was just like one problem after another with them. Missed opportunities abounded. Finally, it felt like it was all coming together for them with this album. They'd ruin it, you know, soon enough because the Curse of the Damned and all that. But for a while, in 85, 86, they're on the top of the world. Following Phantasmagoria, they had a #1 single with a song called Eloise. It was a cover of a 60s tune. The difference between America and the UK with singles, and this lasted, I think, up until, you know, well, by the 90s you saw less of it. Actually, no, because Oasis put out that Whatever single, and since I didn't buy the single, I couldn't get my hands on that for the longest time. I think it was 2000 before I heard Whatever. Unless it was on Master Plan. Anyway, point being, the singles they released in England, they would release singles from the albums, but they would also release singles on their own, like songs that they just finished in the studio and they put out by themselves, not connected to any albums. Eloise was one of those songs. Unfortunately, I think they should have held that over for the next album, Anything. And I mean, because that would have helped them a lot on that album. But anyway, at this point, they were the most popular they had ever been. I would say now they're more popular because, you know, the internet, they're more like a legacy band now. You know, people can get their whole discography very easily, and their influence has been felt and talked about by so many other bands. So they're probably at the biggest now, they were. But as a commercial force, 85, 86, that was a height for them for a long time. And Phantasmagoria album was a big part of that. Yeah, it's a great album. I love it. It's like a little bit, there's some Baroque kind of stuff on there. It's very showy, kind of, a little over the top. Actually, the weird thing is, you know, you look at the album cover and you put it on, the first thing you hear is a saxophone, which is not what you're expecting. So it doesn't sound like traditionally what you would think of as goth rock. It's more the aesthetic. And the songs, certainly on punk, they're more just like, there's a lot of that 60s element in there. It's just not as up front. Captain wrote one song with them for that album before he left, Is It a Dream? And that's on there. Then there's like, what else is on there? It doesn't, you know, I don't have the track list with me, but yeah, Phantasmagoria. It was one of the few chapters in this band's history where everything seemed to be going right. It wouldn't last. It never does with these guys. Next time we'll be back with something else. Maybe I'll just go right into Anything next time and just wrap up this mid-80s situation. But for now, I gotta seek shelter. I'm gonna be blown away. Don't blame the teacher, blame the school.